That is the California sunset. It's about 4:21 here on the west coast of the United States of America, and I'm gonna post a response to Nick, Modern Mystic. It's been a while, but it seems like every 3 years or so, this issue of consciousness becomes mutually interesting for us, and I'm glad that you've chosen to revisit it. Um, and I guess it's kind of well, as the computer scientist Marvin Minsky put it, it's kind of a suitcase term. This word consciousness, it carries a lot of baggage, and it's used to mean a lot of different things in different contexts. Um, and you would expect this to be the case in a field of study um, that's still very young, at least as far as the modern scientific method is concerned. You could say that consciousness has been studied since the dawn of humanity in some sense, though when we talk about the methods of modern science, I don't think we necessarily mean that we have to find some physical explanation for consciousness, but we have to find um, some unbiased knowledge, in some ways objective knowledge about what it is that we're doing when we are conscious and how it is that we are doing it. There are certainly all kinds of mystical and spiritual doctrines about what consciousness is, um, but for the most part, they're not easily um, amenable to observation or experiment. Certainly, there are some, like Rudolf Steiner, for example, who say that, well, my non-physical explanation for consciousness is still something which can be tested and put to experience. You can observe what Steiner describes for yourself. So he says, um, and for Steiner, this would require cultivating higher organs of perception. Not conceiving of new ideas through which to understand consciousness, but rather cultivating organs of perception which currently lie dormant for most people, uh, such that observation of our own thinking becomes possible for us. Most people think transparently. Um, you know, what seems like mere perception is actually a very complex, um, you know, process of conceptualization. People learn to navigate the world in a sort of immediate um, and skillful way by incorporating certain concepts in such a way that they become seamlessly woven into the perceptual world. And so thinking is transparent for the most part. But someone like Steiner would suggest that through philosophical activity, that through a process of training and honing our own thinking capacity, that we can begin to witness our own thoughts as they happen in the act of arising. So rather than the thoughts being transparent to our perception of the world, we begin to recognize when a concept emerges to fit or relate to a percept. We begin to participate actively in that process of meeting percepts with concepts. Um, and for Steiner, this is a spiritual activity that can't really be reduced to the brain. And I'm not sure, Nick, if when you say that consciousness is a problem for science, or remains a problem for science, that you're suggesting it may not have a physical explanation. I mean, you did say that you think it has something to do with a very clever um, chemical reaction. Uh, I you know try to remain scientific and objective, but it's probably for that reason, or I would argue it's for that reason, that I'm unable to conceive of how molecules could become mind. Because that's really the question here, right? How do you get mind from non-mind? How do you get consciousness from matter? I don't think you can. But this is why not only do I agree with you that single-celled organisms are in the possession of some proto-consciousness, some very meager form of experience and will. I think we have to say that this goes all the way down, and that in fact the very basic physical phenomenon of gravity, is also a sort of intentional proto-experiential process where atoms are in some sense drawn toward one another due to their own, it's almost a completely mechanical process, which is why we can study it with mathematical formalisms used by physicists, but it still, I think, can be described as a process of atoms seeking one another out. That atoms sort of want to be together, and that want, that will, is basic to natural processes, I think. And it complexifies as evolution unfolds. Not unanimously. There are plenty of examples, as people like Dennett and Dawkins will point out, of organisms in the history of life on Earth sort of moving towards simplicity rather than complexity. But I think on the whole, as thinkers like Teilhard and Chardin point out, there's a trend towards cerebralization, the increasing complexity of nervous systems, and somehow more single-celled organisms interacting together in a network, in a colony, is able to produce a more intense experience of interiority, consciousness, identity, will. Somehow this internal twisting upon itself that our physiology displays increases the freedom that is at our organism's disposal. So the human being is the culmination, or at least the local culmination. I mean, for all I know, there are other even more intelligent and creative organisms than human beings on other planets. And certainly we have our flaws, but it seems that somehow we are the culmination of a will that's basic to the universe's growth itself. That it's hardwired, if you will, into all of nature for greater consciousness and greater complexity to be sought after. So I guess that's my main point, really. But I also wanted to bring up another of Rudolf Steiner's ideas, which is that rather than talking about this suitcase term consciousness, we could break it up into a threefold structure. We could say that there's thinking, there's feeling, and there's willing, and each of these are part of what we consider consciousness to be. Now, feeling, usually you consider that a subjective thing. It has to do with how your organism exists in relation to the world. So it's your perspective. You feel something based on your own internal dynamics. So you could say that feeling is a sort of physiological or organismic thing, whereas thinking, for Steiner, is our participation in something universal, something greater than our organism. And so it can't really be explained in terms of the physical organism itself. Because, you know, when I have an idea of, say, the number 3, uh, most mathematicians take very seriously the idea that that number doesn't exist in my head, but that when I think it, I participate with you in some higher realm of archetypal forms, of mathematical ideas that exist independently of my skull or your skull. Um, so thinking is a spiritual activity, as Steiner puts it, and you know, I think mathematics and higher philosophy and our ability to think abstractly and to conceive of possibilities which don't, strictly speaking, exist in the physical world is, evidence in support of this hypothesis, let's call it, that consciousness cannot be reduced to physics or some type of sophisticated chemical reaction. Which is not to say that consciousness is something floating on top of the physical and chemical and biological phenomena. Just that the physical and chemical and biological phenomena either are not the only things operative or are not what we at first suspected they were. And maybe the question isn't how do we get mind from non-mind, how did consciousness arise in a mindless universe, but rather, we see that the universe never was mindless. That may be the only way around this dilemma, I think, is a complete shift in the sort of Newtonian worldview, the mechanistic worldview, which captured the imagination of the Western European world after the scientific revolution in the 17th century. It's a very new way and a radically different way of looking at the world that's only been around for a few hundred years. And it may turn out that this picture of nature as mindless may turn out to be, both one of the most interesting mistakes and in some sense, more than just interesting because it provided all this technology, but it may turn out to be just a passing fad of sorts. We may come to reintegrate it with the sort of enchanted, animistic cosmos that the vast majority of human civilizations have held to, throughout the history of our species. And it doesn't seem, that hard to connect the fact that only with modern science and industry has the human species been able to bring not only its own existence, but the existence of thousands of other species on this planet to the brink of extinction. So not only is this mechanistic picture of the universe and the technologies it's produced potentially a wrong or incorrect way of understanding nature, but it's also destroying it. So there's more than just theoretical reasons for reconsidering it. There are practical reasons as well. Anything else? Yeah, there was more, but I'll leave it at that for now. Be curious to hear your thoughts on some of these ideas, Nick. Thanks for listening.